Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is S.C. Coleman, author. And in this video, we are going to be talking about secret societies. Now, I am working on and planning to do some more videos dissecting applicable documents and things like that, but all of those things take time. And most of these videos that I do talking about thoughts and ideas are simply formulations in my own mind to analyze and explain in the closest thing I can do to simple terms concepts that have been found, that I've found, either in these documents that I research, in books, and from the works of other people, other videos, all those types of things. Well, in some ways, all of these are works of other people. But the bulk and majority of these documents I research either are technical, have some sort of technical aspect, or they are made by committees, one way or another. Or at least the committee, the being made by a committee is an aspect that is presented. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And so here we're going to talk about the getting into the truth. Now you have truthers out there, and then you got all these people who try to belligerate you into accepting the truth and all this other type of religious sort of nonsense. The religiosity idea, the idea of concept of sanctifying things or being above reproach, beyond question, all those types of things. All of that comes from this concept of the secret society. Most people are falsely taught that secret societies are to be respected and feared. They are intimidating. That is a lie. One of the primary tenets of secret societies is lying. It is a control mechanism. The easiest way to conceptualize secret societies is that of a single storefront business. What we see are the storefront attendants. The secret societies are the managers of those storefront attendants, and nothing more. When you go and say, I want to speak to your manager, what you're saying is, I want to see the secret society. The difference being is that most managers and storefronts will come out and talk to you. Members of the secret society will not. You can't go up there directly and say, I want to see the manager to the storefront attendants today. The storefront attendants have a policy of do not divulge the identity of the secret society people. Right? And they don't know anything, they're just storefront attendants. So that's what we're going to get into here. The first thing to conceptualize is that this is the layer behind functions. Functions like tax offices, so-called welfare organizations, public works, right? The electrical, water, plumbing, so-called public safety or police, sheriffs, etc. Whenever you go into an office somewhere, that is the storefront attendant. The layer behind that are the secret societies. Directives are given to these secret societies, which are then directed to the public society through these front organizations. That's what they are, they're fronts. An idea of a way that you could talk about this is that they are a middle state, if you will. Like you've got the so-called the state, right? You've got the state government. You have the state of affairs. You know, a bunch of these words. You've got estate and you've got Stadt, meaning city, in German. The public society we all know as the main state, right? Well, the middle state, or the state between, are the secret societies. Some examples are the Knights of Columbus. These are applicable to law enforcement. There is no police chief, sheriff, or director of some type of director of the highway patrol, whatever. There is no individual in any single command position of any so-called law enforcement entity throughout the United States, possibly the globe, who is not a member of the Knights of Columbus. They simply don't exist. That is your middleman administration of so-called law enforcement, the Knights of Columbus. Now, they could also be members of other groups, Freemasons, etc. None of that particularly matters. What matters is the understanding that this organization group, don't focus on the individuals, focus on the organizational group, because that's what's important. The organizational group of the Knights of Columbus dictates to, say, the Fraternal Order of Police or things like that, right? Or the Sheriff's Associations. And then in turn, they dictate to those actual entities themselves. So there's still an extra layer before you even get to so-called law enforcement, which are all of the unions and associations and all that stuff. Behind them is the society. Freemasons are an example of the society that controls labor and administration. This is a wide group of professions and grades and different functions and things. The Jesuits, or the Society of Secret Society, the Army of God, that sort of thing, right? These are a more elevated section of society, and they generally revolve around the areas of finance, resources, and funding. The Jesuits try to be behind the societies that are behind everything, right? That's what they try to do. But they are, in fact, still, essentially speaking, just another middleman component. The Jesuits are the ones behind control of, like, the banks and things like that, right? They run a racket through resources, the so-called nonprofits, right? All of that money laundering, and of course trafficking of children and a whole bunch of other stuff. The adrenochrome and whatnot. So a lot of people are under the assumption or belief, because that's what they've been taught, that you get selected to become a member of the secret society, and that you have to be initiated by another member. And we have all these secret handshakes, or they have all these secret handshakes and other nonsense like that. That is not true. Every single person from birth is slated to become a member of the secret society at one level or another. The people who are specifically barred from membership in the field in the secret societies are filtered out. This is what I call the filter method. Only the most obedient, those with complete mindlessness and strict blind adherence to orders, are ever able to enter or progress within secret society. So if you have a tendency to blindly adhere to orders, to being unstable and easy to manipulate, and the strictest, utmost obedience to your quote-unquote superior, then you rise in the ranks. Stupidity is an integral component of that, meaning stupidity as in low levels of cognition and complete and absolute mindlessness, simply doing what feels good or feels right or what you're told to do, and just because simply doing what you're told to do is the right thing to do. That type of stuff. Those individuals, the ones who are filtered out, are going to be your individualized people who in some capacity question what they're supposed to do. Now, that's a natural instinct of humanity. People in general question things. Some people question things more than others. Some people are more independent. Some people are more rebellious, right? All of those people, those are all considered the worst traits you can have, and they're all filtered out. You can't join the secret society. You are essentially suppressed down simply by the fact that you are barred. Until you change those behavioral habits, you're not allowed to progress. in public society or secret societies. The secret societies control the public society because those people who are filtered in, they are placed in control of modern functions. They are provided jobs, property, and titles. The more obedient, the more mindless, and the more you strictly adhere to orders, the better titles you get, the more jobs you get, and the more property you get. The collective standards of secret societies supersede the collective standards of the public society, and they are absolute on all members. So, if you're in a public society, you strictly adhere to the rules of public society. If you're in a secret society, you strictly adhere to the rules of the secret society and not the public society, and the strict rules of the public society are administered and delivered by members of the secret society, and that's how that works. It's a tiered system. Both the strict enforcement of rules, collectivist standards and rules of public society and secret society are enforced through the very same way, which is on fear and resentment. So what I mean by that is, strictly speaking, do this or else, fear. You are afraid of violating the laws of the collectivist standard because of the resentment of everyone else. You see it every time somebody runs a red light, doesn't stop at a stop sign, does something they're, quote, not supposed to do. The people in the vicinity will all act nasty to that individual simply because that person did something they were not supposed to do. It has nothing to do whether that person actually either, first of all, didn't do it well. There is no, okay, so for instance, you could have a couple people waiting at a sidewalk. You have a four-way intersection, and driving habits are the most applicable example, I believe, especially today. You got a four-way intersection, you have a stop sign, right? No cars in any vicinity, and somebody just blows right through it and keeps going. All those people standing by that saw that will all start complaining to each other about how that person violated the rule. It has nothing to do with the fact of danger or safety or any of those things. It only has to do with the fact that they resent seeing somebody else do something they're not supposed to do. Now, let's say somebody decides to do something about it in a certain capacity, like, for instance, somebody stops in the middle of the road. And then some moron comes out and starts yelling at the person for stopping in the middle of the road. Well, if four dudes strapped up with rifles get out of the vehicle, immediately that person turns around and walks away. Now, the reason for this, we will get into in a minute, but it's essentially speaking fear and resentment. So the people follow the strict adherence to rules because they're afraid of the resentment of everyone else. And the resentment of everyone else comes out of the I'm not going to use that word. It comes out of their own fear of violating those rules. And if they, in their minds, say, if I'm afraid of violating these rules, then those people should be too, essentially. So the fear and resentment don't go away. But if they're encountered with something which supersedes the fear of the collective group, then they will, of course, get away from that. And that's sort of the idea, is that it's all based off of fear and resentment. So the members of secret societies are all going to be inherently cowardly. You cannot be in a secret society unless you're cowardly. You get filtered out. They are incapable of action without permission. The higher up you go in a secret society, the more you require permission to do anything. They are legitimately incapable of taking any actions without first asking whether or not they can take those actions. They don't get permission from the same people we do, though. They get permission from their secret superiors. Now, they despise physical actions that violate collective standards. It doesn't matter what the action is. All that it matters is that it's going against the rule. And that is it. They despise seeing people do physical displays because most of it has to do with physical display. If you do it in secret and they don't know you did it, then they don't know you did it, right? So it has to do with them seeing it done. If they see people in the, quote, public environment violating the physical collectivist standards and whatnot, then they get mad at that person. However, if that person is an initiate, then the other initiates in the secret societies, they don't care whether an initiate violates the public-facing collectivist standards. However, if an initiate violates the collectivist standards of the secret society, well, now you're talking about engaging that resentment. They despise the physical actions that violate collectivist standards. It's the appearance of the thing. It's appearing to violate the collectivist standards. If you do it in secret, they don't care so much. If you do it publicly and other people see it, that will inspire others to begin to violate the collectivist standards, and thus they begin to lose control. And that's the reason behind why they all do it. But the reason why each individual member does it is because they resent the fact that others have the audacity to do what they themselves cannot. They are cognitively impaired. They're chemically cognitively impaired, and they also do not develop cognitive prowess or powers. They do not develop cognition. They don't think about concepts. They don't think about ideas. It's purely sensational. They only do what feels right, what they like to do, etc. That's the reason why a lot of these members of secret societies you find to be essentially adult children. They like to play games. They like to waste their lives on simply on just a simple impulse, right? They have a simple impulse to do something and they do it. Instant gratification, they immediately go do it. They don't think beyond the next day, hour, minute, or second. They cannot see past physical appearances. They can't see past physical appearances. They can't comprehend content of character. They can't comprehend the content of actions. They can't comprehend motives. They cannot comprehend anything beyond what they see. If you dress a certain way, all their judgments are based off how you dress, how you walk, how you carry yourself, and how you look. If you have a cognitive capability to control those things, you can present any face, any appearance, anything you want to them, and they will accept it as fact of truth. If you dress in a suit, if you elevate yourself in appearance to that of an important person of standing, they will recognize you as that. But if you don't obviously show the indicators that you're initiated in the secret societies, then they will of course group you into the idea of the public, the public facing masses, the public masses, right? You are not an initiate, but they'll still recognize that physical appearance you're presenting, and they may even think that you're intentionally not showing that you're an initiate as essentially an undercover, because that happens a lot in secret societies. You have undercovers from the secret society sent in among the members of the secret society to determine whether or not they are following the collectivist standards of that secret society. It's the same thing that they do with so-called secret shoppers, etc. And so-called undercover agents. They do that in secret societies too, except these are undercover members of the secret society, of usually an elevated status, who are pretending to be members of the public to watch for the initiated members of the secret society violating their collectivist standards. So because of these traits and these elements and this understanding, it is very easy to identify members or adherents of the secret society. First of all, the primary is the inability to adapt. Because the types of people who are filtered out have the capabilities to adapt, the people left are the bottom of the barrel types of humans, obedient to a fault, strictly speaking manipulatable and easy to control, sensationalist, all of that stuff, right? They're not advanced mentally. They have a specific capability to adapt to any type of environment that is not a controlled, pattern-based, ritualized environment. So all you have to do is do something out of character, out of the ordinary, throw a little dust into the eyes and watch what they do. Members of secret societies cannot adapt to change, ever, unless that change is orchestrated, ritualized, and considered normal. They cannot function around weird. They are rigid and they blindly adhere to what they're told to do. That's very important. Rigidity. You can recognize them by their rigid personalities, their lack of ability to comprehend, understand, or listen to other perspectives. They are absolutely and concretely rigid. They are essentially the equivalent of a human version of a computer program. They are brainwashed, and their minds are programmed to serve out their particular functions. They hold fear and contempt as not simply fundamental to controlling other people, but also themselves. They are, simply speaking, filled with fear and contempt. The contempt comes from that fear, and that fear also tends to come from their contempt. They're sort of the what came first, the chicken or the egg type of thing. Now another element that you can use to identify members is that they have specially and arbitrarily assigned rewards. Like I said, jobs, property, and titles. When you find somebody who does not fit the title, job, or the property that they have, they are a member of a secret society. And if you can match it up to these other elements, then you can confirm beyond a doubt that they are in fact an initiated member of a secret society. Now, like I said before, the secret societies are not all just inherent. I mean, the structure of the secret society is evil, but each individual member of the secret society is not inherently evil, because all of them are simply the managers of the storefront. Yes, most of them are probably evil and wicked individually. However, the structure itself is absolutely evil and wicked, but not all of them are. That's the thing to comprehend. You need to understand what exactly you're dealing with. Other associated traits and combinations will confirm secret society membership, and the biggest one above all else is, of course, ritualized behavior. Everybody knows that secret societies are heavily into rituals. That is called behavior modification by so-called intellectual academic doctors and such. So what they do is they modify your behavior to strictly adhere to rules and collectivist regulations, and then the orders given by your quote-unquote superiors through ritual. Constant, repetitive, mindless ritual. It is a function of the system. It is inseparable. People who engage in ritualized behavior are most definitely people who not engage in ritualized behavior, but in fact embody ritualized behavior, are definitely initiates of a secret society. Everybody engages in ritualized behavior to some extent. But people whose lives are built around constant ritualized behavior, they don't think for themselves, are most certainly initiates in a secret society. Now, the members gain satisfaction, as in what they tell themselves to remain members. They gain their satisfaction by believing themselves superior to the non-initiated. We have heard this many, many times, that, oh, you're not an initiate, so you're not allowed to know what we know. And that is the perspective with which members of the secret societies are held. First of all, they're stupid. They're cognitively impaired. Stupid, I mean cognitively impaired. They don't have the mental functions or capacity beyond a surface understanding and comprehension. They are sensationalized, so they do what feels right and they follow their own most basic impulses. They strictly adhere to orders and obedience, and those are the exact types of people that are perfect for convincing they're better than everyone else. It's so easy. They mainly use repeated fictional stories to encourage or discourage behavior. So the members of the secret society, they go out into the regular masses but they all repeat the same fictional stories. They all use the same methods. You start talking about something and you're trying to have a conversation or engage with something, and these members of these secret societies will always repeat the same stories, either to discourage or encourage certain behavioral habits. Always. It is the most easily identified pattern of the behavioral habits of secret society members. And this is designed as a capture-all collectivist rule playbook for which they seek to manipulate the behavior of public masses. This small percentage of the public masses who catch on to this and figure it out, they don't care about that. The whole point of repeating these fake stories and whatnot is to manipulate the behavior of groups of people. And so that's the reason why, say, you argue with somebody about this fake story, and of course you don't really win the argument. They either get mad at you, walk away, they ignore you, etc., because they're being dishonest. They're not there for an actual discussion. And then the next day you go and find a different person, and they're saying the same thing. The same thing that other person is saying. And I mean the same thing. I don't mean a different version. I mean exact word for word what that other person said. Exactly the same. Not even slightly different. They are saying the exact carbon copy, same sentences, same phrases, and same vocabulary as that other person you have an argument with. And you say, why am I going to bother arguing with this person? Because I already argued with this other guy and it was a waste of time. And then some people who don't pick up on that yet, they'll try to argue with the same person and the argument will go the exact same way. Not slightly different, not a small variation, but exactly the same way. That's because those are initiates in the secret societies, and they are engaging in, well, they are enacting they're showing ritualized behavioral practice. They are not thinking for themselves. They're simply going out as programs of the structure of the system. What's interesting, though, is that the fear-mongering through these stories as an attempt to discourage certain types of behavior can be a double-edged sword. An example of this can be found with them making up characters like Rambo and Christopher Dorner. Now, Rambo, just about anyone will accept, is a fictional character, but it matches up exactly to the Christopher Dorner character because in the Rambo stories, he takes on the entire law enforcement structure, eventually, of course, gets arrested and put in prison, but he kills a lot of them by himself. But ultimately, he is subjugated, right? That's the thing they want to teach you. What they want to teach you is that no matter what you do, no matter how capable you are, you cannot go up against the system and win. You can't basically, I fought the law and I won kind of thing, right? You cannot disobey the collectivist standards and get away with it, no matter how capable you are. And the other intent behind this is to teach members of the military structure and organization, because the military structure and organization is one of the few places on the planet that teaches individualized capability and the ability to sail under one's own wind or under one's own power kind of thing. They want to teach all of those people that you're incapable, because if you try and do something, they'll say, oh, you think you're Rambo, right? That's how they function. And yes, that might work to discourage and diminish the mentally neuter members of the military, right? Convincing them they're all disabled and broken and everything like that, and they're incapable, and they're not Rambo, and even Rambo lost to so-called the law. That's the purpose, and that's what they want to do. But it's a double-edged sword, because if somebody figures that out, the military members might feel shame and thus be easily controlled by this story, but everyone else sees the fictional character. So any single one person, one member of a military organization, one person can recognize that and leverage all their efforts of creating these fictional stories against them by confirming their fears. If you go out there and embody the vision of Rambo or Christopher Dorner, you will put sheer terror into the minds of all cops, troopers, highway patrol, sheriffs, all of their so-called law enforcement, because all of those people have been taught about the immense capabilities of certain members of the military like Rambo and Christopher Dorner. And that, yes, they might take this guy down, but it's going to take a hell of a lot of dead bodies to do it. And the people who are going to be dying are, of course, the people that are going to have to go after them, right? This, of course, also works in the founded mind of the secret society types themselves, who all are fearful, cowardly people who have all been instilled with these stories and ritualized behavior and a lack of capability. And so the simple appearance of looking like these fictional story characters that they've created is enough. It's truly spectacular. It's a double-edged sword. That provides a means of leverage, which they did not intend, because what they wanted to do was fear and disable anyone with any type of individualist capability into becoming beaten down and strictly adhering to collectivist rules and standards. The secret society methods are one, threat. They always threaten you. They always say, this or that was going to happen if you don't do it. It doesn't matter if it's true. It just matters that you believe it's true. And even if you don't believe it's true, they'll repeat it constantly, so eventually it will just become embedded in your brain, and eventually your behavioral habits will change through manipulation of your subconscious. The second are lies. They always lie. Even in their secret societies, they lie, but they tell you some truth according to your level in the secret society. However, if you're a public-facing individual, a member of the public masses, then you will never, ever hear any truth whatsoever. Even just you go outside and the sky's blue, right? Secret society members are obligated to lie to all members of the public society. They can't lie to the initiated, but they can only talk to initiated on determining certain hierarchical positions within the society. But when it comes to the members of the public masses, all members of secret societies are obligated to lie to those who are not initiated. So they're always lying. And that's because lying is a primary control mechanism and function of these secret societies. They do not want the serfs to know better, because otherwise the serfs won't work the land, and the serfs need to be ignorant so that they can be happy and will work the land. And that's the way they say it. They say, we're going to keep the public masses happy so that our society continues to function. Otherwise it breaks down and we have chaos and disorder and death. That's how they always term it. That's how they all say it. They all repeat the same phrases. You see it here repeated constantly. And they could be different people, but they're essentially the same person because they all speak the same way. They sound like a freaking textbook. Those are your secret society members, of course. And that's what they do. The third role, of course, is finance. Finance is a big control component of secret societies. What they choose to finance is what gains control or traction, and they remove their financial backing to essentially destroy, sicken, or eliminate something. Stupidity, insanity, and ignorance are also primary weapons or mechanisms of the secret society, and we'll touch each one. First, stupidity. Stupidity is somebody who may know better, but they still lack functional processing capabilities. They induce stupidity through cognitive blockers, chemicals, and things like that. So you could have somebody who knows something or is capable of something, but they still go and do something else because they are stupid, because they are simply following an impulse, a sensation, and they are not using any thought behind it. That can be induced through chemicals, right? We all know about, of course, drinking, right? You drink and you do stupid stuff. And there's a saying in the Marine Corps, don't go full stupid, usually relative to going out and drinking a lot. You know better, you're capable, and yet even though you know better, you know you're capable, and you can go and do things without causing trouble, you still go and do the stupid thing. So stupidity is a primary functional mechanism, a method of the secret societies. The way they use it is that even though somebody knows better, they will still get that person to go do something out of the sensational capacity. So a person might know that churches are evil and bad and everything. They've had all these experiences, and yet they continue and repeatedly go to different churches thinking the situation will be better. That's because they want the positive feeling of going and socializing with people, and they're like a dog returning to its own vomit. Literally, like a dog returning to its own vomit. Well, figuratively, obviously. It couldn't be literally like a dog returning to its own vomit, because then you wouldn't have the word like. But either way, they're figuratively like a dog returning to its own vomit. And that's just an example. People hear the repetition about churches. They see all the churches' stuff, and they could... And I catch myself doing it sometimes, where I know all the stuff about churches. I researched all of it and everything like that, and I still consider going back to a church. And I have to stop myself and think, that's stupid. So stupidity is a primary control mechanism of secret societies. Insanity is another one. Also, again, they can induce this through chemicals. And the third one, ignorance, they can also induce through chemicals. Ignorance is similar to brainwashing, just simply not knowing or forgetting. Insanity is the whack job idea, where you have all these people walking around and yelling at the sky and whatnot. Now, if you act outside the collectivist standards in some way, or contrary to them, then they will leverage insane people against you. And you'll have all these lunatics coming up and disrupting your life and causing problems. So insanity is a primary mechanism as enforcement, but also they seek to induce insanity to create essentially tools and soldiers that they can use effectively. Ignorance is another one. You have all these people who don't know anything going out and doing stuff and being sent out there to do everything, right? You see them with the dude with the ID card who comes to your door and starts telling you need to do stuff, and the person is completely brain dead. They have no idea what they're doing, and you say, you don't know anything, and the person gets mad and flustered and huffy and wants to call 911 and all that stuff. That's ignorance. Ignorance is a primary weapon and component of control and method of secret societies, and you see it throughout all of the universities and school systems, where you have all these people who don't know anything, and then they're the ones that are the teacher's pet. They're the favorites. They know nothing, and yet they act and are reinforced in their collectivist environments as knowing everything. It's the land of the blind being led where the one-eyed man is king, but you also essentially have the blind people trying to go out and blind everyone else, which is interesting, because if they're blind, how are they going to blind you? Right? They can't see you. And that's the same thing with these ignorant people. They can't see you. You have one of those little bimbos, right? The secretary women, the woke moron warriors, social justice idiots, and they approach a door, and the door's opened by somebody who's presenting some type of physically intimidating aspect, and that person immediately will back up. They'll be on their back foot. If an old person answers the door, or a child or a woman, then they're like, oh, okay, I can intimidate this person, or I can convince them. But again, these people are all cowardly and fearful, and they instill that in everyone else. So when they send out their little blind, ignorant people to harass you and control you, and they send out their little Jehovah's Witness people and all that nonsense, who are always these like really ignorant and stupid, childish, prepubescent type of, I'm being sarcastic, people, well, they get intimidated by a physical appearance of, you see it everywhere. They're afraid to go out in the woods because they're afraid of wild animals. They're afraid to go out and walk in the street because of cars. They're afraid of everything. They're afraid of their shadow, right? So that's important to notice. But the ignorant is a effective measure to control the public masses, right? Like I said, they're not worried about those few individuals out there who have the capabilities. They all get filtered out, and they all get suppressed, and you're not allowed to live life or do anything or do this or that. You're not allowed to have a job, etc., right? They do all these things to you simply through their filtering structure. And so the ignorant army sent out is more for just the general masses at large, right? Hysteria is another one. If you say something that they don't like, the secret society types of people, they'll induce hysteria. They'll induce screaming and crying and yelling and whipping themselves and all this. We know what that looks like, the hysteria, right? You got the people going out in the streets and screaming and waving their signs around and crying and laying down in the street and, pay attention to me, look at me, that kind of thing, right? That's all histrionics and hysteria. That's one of the primary control mechanisms of the secret society. It's inducing the basic function of childishness as a means to cajole others. So, you talk to these secret society people and they all represent that. You say something they don't like, then they try to counter you. And because you know what you're talking about, they move on to hysteria. They start yelling. They start getting angry, right? They attempt to belligerently force you into accepting a falsehood. And when you stand your ground, then they start crying. Then they start weakening and they start getting down and looking down and saying, I'm sad. And your behavior just makes me sad. And I'm just so distraught, right? And if that doesn't work, then they move on to throwing things, breaking stuff, trying to cause as much of a scene and things as possible. And you see this mental programming training in movies and TV shows where every girl, of course, when the boyfriend cheats on them, they go and make a scene, right? That's what it's all about, making a scene. Crying and screaming, and that is all hysteria. It is a control mechanism. And there's a couple ways to shut it down, but another way to do it is to respond back with more hysteria. That's something that people don't generally do, but if you're a cognitive individual, you can do it better than they can because you're doing it just like they're doing it on purpose. But whereas they are cowardly and they have to follow certain standards and strict adherence, being a creative individual, you can come up with all kinds of weird ways to inflict hysteria back on them. So they start yelling and screaming. Well, you instantly go to the victim and start going, woo-hoo-hoo, and they wouldn't expect it, right? And then they don't know how to adapt because they can't respond to random change. They don't expect a cognitive, logical, rational person to respond to them using a tactic they're using. They never expect it. I don't know why, because you would think that would be a function of the secret societies, considering that they do that. But I guess in their little collectivist environments, you are not allowed to do things back to the members. They're only allowed to do things to the forward-facing public masses. So if they encounter somebody in the forward-facing public masses who starts leveraging their own systems against them, they don't know what to do. They can't handle it. They can't handle hysteria being used to cancel out their hysteria. They expect you to sit there and take it and try to explain and argue and convince them, right? That's what they expect. They don't expect you to use their own methods against them. They inherently lack experience because they are provided with everything through their control structure. So they don't actually have to act in reality. They don't have to figure it out, right? So they lack experience. They also lack recognition, and especially they lack recognition of the experience in other people. They lack proportionality, and they lack understanding. And I'll give one primary example for this. A moronic federal agent believes, and what I mean by federal agent is usually an attorney acting under a federal agent guise, letterhead, name, or a subcontracted employee who is going around saying they're a federal agent. They look at a Marine veteran, for instance, and we'll go down the line. They cannot comprehend the experience, so they lack recognition, meaning they don't know what that Marine's actually been through because they personally haven't been through anything themselves. They also do not understand proportionality, meaning they don't know what it takes to get what they want done because they, again, lack the recognition to understand the other individual's experience, and they lack understanding of everything, understanding of what that person's capable of, what they've been through, and what they recognize as well. For instance, the federal agent people today, all the subcontracted bimbos and idiots that come out of the school system and all the attorneys and all these other morons, they look at military individuals as their enemy, as their primary enemy, because those people challenge their control over the public masses, specifically. Now, they don't have any comprehension about what military people actually go through. There is a huge difference between, say, a Marine, a soldier, an airman, or somebody from the Navy, a sailor. Huge difference. And one of those primary differences is the crucible. Every Marine, no matter what their job title is, has been through the crucible. That is a shared experience among all Marines. Marines in general have shared experiences, including the rifle range, gas chamber, all that stuff, basic training, etc., boot camp. The crucible is a big one. Any Marine that's gone through a crucible, only the people who got washed out in boot camp and medically separated, who never made it that far, they haven't been through the crucible. Every Marine who has graduated boot camp has gone through the crucible. That is a particular experience which establishes a bar for what adversity they can resist. So you take somebody in these corporate offices and all these other nitwit morons who think they can inflict psychological, financial, and otherwise adverse conditions on these veterans and on these military people, and they attempt to apply it categorically across all spectrums. So they lack recognition, they lack proportionality, and they lack understanding. They can't understand that what they're doing is not proportionate to what the individual can take. Every Marine can withstand adversity far beyond what they know because they don't have any experience. They can't comprehend nor understand what their target has actually been through. And that is the primary weakness of the system, is that the individuals that they send out to control things can't comprehend what they're intended to control or do or target. And this means they are very weak. The entire structure and organization is extremely weak. The individuals who are sent out to control things only know how to follow orders, and they only do what they're told under threat. The easiest way to take over these secret societies is not to try and play around with their front-facing components, the so-called government, the Congress, the tax man, all that stuff, right? Instead, it's to go after the secret societies themselves and order the members to do what you tell them to do, saying, there's a new collectivist standard now, and I'm the one making it, and if you don't do it, something bad is going to happen to you individually. That is how you take over complete and utter control of the entire society today. You simply hijack, well, you don't really hijack, because in this context you're conquering. You conquer the secret societies by understanding that all the members are trained to take orders under fear. And that is it. They don't think, they can't comprehend, they don't understand, they are incapable to every extent, to every level they're incapable. And they were particularly chosen, or not chosen, but filtered up because of their strict obedience and adherence and blindly following what they're told to do. You can get together the individuals who know what they're doing and are capable, and even a handful of people can take any of these structures over with virtually no trouble. It's truly astounding. And the fact that they've been able to get along with it, get away with this stuff for so long is also astounding. But that's no longer the case, and as the saying goes, the jig is up. People are becoming wise to it. There's many people out there that know, and I mean know, what the reality is behind these things. You can't put the cat back in the bag, and none of their tactics are working anymore. I just, sometimes I can't even believe it. It's truly eye-opening just how weak, how weak it really all is. It's sometimes it's shocking that there even has been this, that there's still so many people who are actually afraid and respect these so-called secret societies. Thank you.